Hello YouTube, Jonathan here, and today I wanted to take a look at an old classic game, Monopoly. Now, many of us have played Monopoly in the past and may have different strategies for winning. Here are just some things that I would take into account when playing this game. First and foremost, and this is true of most games that aren't completely up to chance, know your opponents. Know your opponents. It's important because a lot of the time, the initial thing to do, especially for those not well versed in the game, is to say, oh, I want Boardwalk. I want Park Place. Think about how much money I'll gain if somebody lands on one of those spots with a hotel on it. You can use that to your advantage. You can get one of those and use it as an important bargaining chip later and make the person you're trading with think that they got the better end of the deal. Now, one of the things that I like to do in this game is my first time or two around the board, basically buy everything that I land on. And the reason that I do that isn't because I want all those properties, it's because I don't know what I'm going to end up with. I don't know if I'm going to land on those properties that I want, and I need to have as much as possible in my back pocket that I can then use for trading later. Now, a couple things to consider. Which properties do we want? Well, statistically, many people know that that Illinois especially, and the red territories more generally, are the most frequently landed on in the game. So if you're playing against somebody who maybe knows Boardwalk and Park Place aren't the places to be, they may try to go after the red properties. Now, if you're able to get them, great. That is what you want to do. You want to focus on what people are most likely to land on, which takes you right here. And if you can get those, that's what you want to do. Failing that is if you can prevent somebody else from getting it, that is what you want to do. So maybe you're playing against a couple opponents, and one of them has 2 reds and the other one has 1, and the player with 2 hasn't aggressively started negotiating, but you think that the player with the 1 is likely to perhaps trade it away because they're not thinking strategically. You might try to preempt that trade and acquire it for yourself. That way, the person with the other 2 can't form a monopoly. Now, the other thing to consider is, and this is something that I personally like to do, is actually to get these orange properties. They're only slightly less likely to be landed on than red. They're really the second best possible monopoly in this game, and when you're buying houses and hotels, they actually cost less because they're on this side of the board rather than this side. So it's $100 per house rather than $150 up here, which overcomes the fact that they're slightly less likely to be landed on. Orange is actually my favorite one to go with. Now, you might be wondering, why are these more likely to be landed on, and then to a slightly lesser degree, yellow and light purple? Why is this corridor here the most valuable in the game? And it is. It's because, yes, players are more likely to land on one of these colors than any other color, but it's also, think about it for a second. How many times are people going to go to jail, either by landing on it or by getting a chance or community chest card or rolling 3 doubles in a row? It happens typically multiple times to each player during the course of a game. If they, regardless of where they are, but let's assume they're here, and they go to jail, they skip all of this and immediately go here, which means they go here 1 less and go here an extra time. Plus, then you have the individual cards that are, advance to Illinois Avenue or advance to this place or that place. And those also help a couple of the properties around here, though there is also an advance to Boardwalk. And so that does increase Boardwalk a little bit. So I would say that it is better, even if it looks like you're losing out on a trade. I mean, you don't want to get railroaded and and, you know, lose out on a whole lot. But it's okay if maybe you're giving up a monopoly somewhere else in order to get a monopoly on orange or red, or maybe light purple and yellow. It's okay if maybe you're giving up two properties if the one property you're getting is going to form that final monopoly for you over here. A lot of people aren't going to notice that, and they'll think that they're coming out ahead. Now, it's important when you're negotiating the deal that you work with them, you don't seem too eager so that they don't feel like there's something going on that they don't realize. That it's important that the other party to your trade feels like they are getting equal, if not more. That way they are less likely to start examining your strategy, things that you are building up, in order to win the game long term. Now, there is an aspect of randomness to Monopoly. I mean, you are rolling your dice every turn, and so are your opponents. You are getting the chance and community chest cards, which could be anything, so there is no guaranteed way to win. But typically, this is a game that takes a while, quite a few times around the board, and so far more often than not, if you're able to play smartly and use the odds to your advantage, especially when your opponents don't, you are far more likely to win this game than if you were just randomly trying to get monopolies or going after Boardwalk and Park Place. Now, you may be in a position where you're not able to get these territories, these properties, and in that case, again, you just want to keep an opponent from getting them, and then no one has that advantage, and then focus on the next best option. So if you can't get a monopoly on red, stop anybody else from getting it, and focus on orange. You can't get a monopoly on orange, stop anybody else from getting it, and focus on, I think yellow is slightly better than light pink, but at the very least focus on one of those two. If neither of those two are going to work, then it's pretty much a just, you know, pick something else. I mean, if you have a monopoly on something at least, and nobody else does, that does give you a distinct advantage. And eventually, unless the game is going to go on forever, people will start making trades. They'll be willing to give somebody else a monopoly if they themselves can get a monopoly. Just make sure when that happens, you have as many properties as you can in your back pocket to use as bargaining chips to allow yourself to get the most favorable monopoly or monopolies as possible. So that's my overview of this game, the base version of Monopoly. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments or things you'd like to add, please leave those in the comment section. I would appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed this video.